1999, in the country of Indonesia, a homicide detective that was working in the East Java section noticed a unique murder case. Upon arrival to the crime scene, the detective viewed the body and found himself disturbed by what he saw. Throughout all of his years of murder investigations, this case, along with all the others, seemed excessively brutal, and it was the trademark of the same killer in each incident. Let's find out together what happened and what encouraged this killer to murder. This channel is about lesser-known serial killers. If you're interested, I upload new content every Tuesday and Thursday. So if you're ready, let's get started. Now back to the story. The detective involved with the homicide investigation questioned all the potential witnesses from the previous murders, but no relevant info was provided. In this particular case, the witness happened to be an elderly female. She witnessed something that terrified her, and she ran to notify the authorities. When questioned, she was uncontrollably sobbing during the interview. She started her story by stating that she didn't know the man and just happened to be a victim of circumstance. Before she encountered the victim, she decided to go out shopping. The witness chose to walk to her destination due to a lack of funds. She realized quickly that this was not a good idea due to her lower back beginning to bother her due to her overexertion. She then noticed a newer type car that resembled a taxi, parked on the side of the road. The lights and engine was running. Feeling lucky, she assumed that she could negotiate a price, so she approached the vehicle. Based on initial observation, the woman saw the silhouette of a person sitting in the driver's seat. The driver appeared to have dozed off to sleep, leaning to the opposite side of the window that she approached. Knocking on the vehicle a few times while saying hello did not elicit a response from the person. When the woman pressed her face into the glass, she noticed that the driver's head was completely covered with blood. The police were then notified. When the man was pulled out of his vehicle, it was noticed that his eyes were pushed into his head. The skull of the driver was covered in blood with some severe fractures, more than likely stemming from a hammer. All of the previous homicides were owners of car rental agencies. They all seemed to have possibly picked up a customer before things went bad. What was so disturbing about each case was nothing was found stolen from any of the victims. These similarities encouraged the investigator to make this investigation into a personal project of his. He was determined on capturing this killer, looking him or her directly in the eye and asking what their motivation was behind these senseless killings. It also didn't hurt that due to the attraction of the media, the prospect of notoriety, and the potential for a promotion would be there if he was able to apprehend this serial killer. The detective gathered as much evidence from the scene and afterwards went home to mentally process what he saw. A year later, a traveling businessman happened to rent a vehicle from a rental agency and drove it to a hotel that he was staying in. When the man arrived, he encountered a young man who struck up a trivial conversation with him. This businessman became obviously annoyed due to this pesky stranger rambling on about nothing that he was interested in listening to. Trying not to be rude, the businessman continued to walk to his destination and begrudgingly talk to the young stranger. This businessman eventually arrived at his room and began to nicely shut down the conversation with his newfound associate. The young man initially couldn't take a hint, so this businessman told him that he was very tired and needed to get some rest. He then wished the young man a good evening as he unlocked the door to his room. As soon as the businessman cracked the door open, the young man pulled out a hammer and commenced to strike the businessman on his skull multiple times while pushing him into his rented room. Before the door closed behind them both, the businessman gave out an ear-shattering scream, much like the kind of scream from a killer slasher type movie. The scream was so loud and intense, it alerted everyone on the floor of the rented room. Immediately after, the young stranger took off running down the hall and out of the building. His escape was seen by several of the renters and staff employees. Strangers went to the aid of this businessman, and he was found dead in his rental room due to blunt force trauma to the head. A description of the young actor was given, and he was located not too far from the crime scene. He was arrested and brought in for questioning. The man was identified as Rio Bulo, and you're not going to believe the statement that he gave. During the interview, the young man confessed to 4 of his murders. When asked why he killed these people and nothing was actually taken from them, He initially stated that his only intent was to rob the victims and he had no intentions on murdering anyone. But when he struck the first blow to each one of his victims, he would emotionally just black out and repeatedly strike each victim until they were all dead. After he killed each victim, he had no more interest in stealing their belongings. Just for context, the young man confessed to being emotionally triggered by attacking these unsuspecting victims. So much, in fact, that after each killing, he felt so fulfilled that he had no longer interest in taking any of their possessions or the vehicle that he initially came to steal. So he killed for the thrill. The detective was so floored by his response that he just stood up and walked out of the room. But wait, there's so much more to this story, so stick around, folks. While in prison, Rio befriended a religious cellmate and they frequently read the Bible together. For months, their relationship became closer the more they immersed themselves into religion, never speaking of each other's choices that placed them in prison. This worked until one day, this mentor asked what Rio had done and he explained that it was multiple homicide. The mentor responded that he couldn't believe that such a kind person as Rio could possibly be a killer. It was at this point Rio became so enraged that the mentor was saying this that he slammed the head of the mentor to the ground multiple times, killing him. Rio was isolated from other prisoners until his death sentence was carried out. Rio was eventually executed by firing squad. If you enjoy more stories such as these, click on one of the suggested videos above. God bless and stay safe.